Hello and welcome to this episode of Demystified as we explore home cooking in a modern world. Hello, Paul.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. How are you?
Things are going a bit pear-shaped lately.
I know.
We're okay.
Well, you're vertical,
Yes,
so that's
I'm
always
vertical.
that's always a good sign.
Vertical, but
Not pain-free.
not quite yet.
No.
But we're working on it.
Well, it is good to see you because it has been a while.
Yes.
And so since we're doing this and there's a microphone between us, I thought I'd ask you a question.
Okay. This is always dangerous.
Well, no, and I feel a little bit I'm not sure, but this question is really just about my interest in cooking hearty sort of meals at this time of the year, because in Australia here, and particularly in Melbourne here, it's
really cold.
Really cold. We've had a really unusually cold, although I know in other parts of the world, cold for them is like minus
40
with snow, and we don't have that. So I don't feel too good about really whinging too much.
Yeah.
But one of my questions is I've been making a pie, this pie mix, and I love this sort of standard. For me, it's like blade steak or chuck steak, and equal quantity. I cut all the yucky bits off and the fatty bits, and then I have an equal quantity of meat too. And my favourite sort of veggies for this are carrots, shallots, celery.
Yeah.
And then I just put in some beef stock and a bit of this and a bit of that.
Pockets.
And low temp, a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And normally then I whack some pastry or something on top to make it into a pie.
Yep.
And then I thought, well, trying to be a little bit healthier as we're approaching, sort of that age where we need to be a bit healthier. So then we were looking at alternatives. So we tried scrunching up some phyllo pastry on top, which looked effective. And I'll show you a photo of it later when I can drag my phone out of the drawer I've got it hiding in at the moment because it just keeps ringing. And but it's kind of feel like it's fiddly, and we just thought, no, next time we're just going to have it with mash, which then makes it not a pie, just makes it a casserole. So what are the differences between a pie mix and a casserole mix? Because to me, when I put the pastry on top,
casserole's such an old school word.
It is an old school word, but
Not
I just
word.
But I just love that sort of meaty heartiness that you get, and lots of veggies, and I love all that.
I don't think there is a pie and a casserole as in of themselves are different, because a pie has some sort of pastry.
Yes.
Generally. That being said, cottage pie, shepherd's pie, is again a little bit different. So it has a lid or a topper on it, I would suggest, right? Whereas a casserole
is
an edible lid or a topper.
Yes.
Whereas a casserole, but they're both braises of sorts. So what's the difference between them? I would say a minimal amount, almost none. The core cooking method is like a slow braise. You use stock, you use liquids, you use wine, whatever, and you cook it slowly. So I don't think there is a mix. The funny thing is I was actually thinking about this the other day, because you're right, everyone gets into this mood, and it's sort of set by what's available as far as seasonality, especially with vegetables, right? So if you look at the fruit and veg markets now, there's a lot of root vegetables and all that sort of stuff starts to become a little bit more prominent like now. So there's lots of, I know you don't eat them, but there's lots of mushrooms around, beetroot, celeriac. I saw the most beautiful parsnips I've ever seen in my life the other day. I was talking to the guy at the market, and he was telling me about this grower. Unbelievable parsnips, like even raw, you just wanted to. Now, I've never seen a parsnip in a supermarket that is half shriveled and gross looking, and these were like thick, and they just, you wanted to cook them just from looking at them. It was extraordinary. I was like, holy dooly, I've never seen parsnips that good. It was noticeable. So you're starting to see that, and that kind of defines the way we cook. But I was thinking about this the other day, because I think we talked about this, about those warm, heartier types of foods. The funny thing is that you go to India, it can be 40 degrees, and they'll be eating curries. We tend to use braises and curries and things like that when it gets cooler. But in other parts of the world where a lot of these things originate, there's no time of year for them. Like beef bourguignon in France, they'll eat that in summer. I remember serving that on 40-degree days in Melbourne. People would come in and order it. So it's you know, you're sort of driven that way by the season a little bit, but yeah, across the world, we seem to embrace that a lot more. When it gets cold, we start making soups.
Oh yeah, I've been doing that.
Yeah,
I've
how
been
often
doing
do you
that
make
for
a
a few
soup in
weeks.
summer?
Yeah, no, very rarely.
Yeah, but
Never,
across
in fact.
the rest of the globe,
Yeah.
they do. It's just that we don't. And maybe it's because we have such extremes in temperatures where we are. I don't know. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. But to your question, the difference between a pie mix and a casserole mix. I mean, you could really sort of argue about how dense or thick, not dense the mix is or thick it is, how like a pie mix, because it's generally going sometimes
The moisture
in a
content,
smaller pastry case, so you might chop your ingredients up a little bit smaller, but it depends on the pie. Like it can be a big family size pie or a little individual one or whatever. So
Yeah.
but I think there's as far as the cooking method goes, there's almost no difference. None.
No,
Because you can make a pie, a pie can be anything inside it, right?
that's right.
Like it can be anything. Like if you want to use chuck steak and onion and celery and carrot, you know, like red wine and throw in some, I don't know, celeriac or whatever, like that's a pie.
But it's also
Wrapped in pastry, but it's also
a really nice braise or casserole.
yeah. I prefer the term braise. Casserole brings back the memories of like 1980s growing up.
Remember those packets?
Mum would say, sort of, I'd get home from school, what are we having for dinner? Or you could smell it when you walked in the door. What are we having for dinner? Oh, it's casserole. Like there was something, I don't know, there's something, it's a generational thing, but...
But remember those packets you used to be able to buy, the savoury mix, you know, and there'd be these little sort of salt flavourings, and then these little tiny dried up pieces of carrot and some other forms of vegetable that would sort of slowly reconstitute in the casserole. Yeah, those
that's
were
back when the
1970s.
Stock cubes were a thing.
Yeah.
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 Stock cubes have only ever had one use for me. And that was back when I was going to school and you'd eat them raw to make yourself sick so you didn't have to go to school.
Oh. Well, see, I differ with you on that. I actually don't mind stock cubes sometimes
that's one thing I've never been able to figure out. I always think it gives a preservative taste to food.
Okay.
Like I don't know, maybe it's just me, but you taste the preservative. I don't know. I've never, I think I've very rarely seen someone use a stock cube to make stock. And this is going way back, right, when I was growing up, right? So I'm probably just referring to my mum. But I remember us having lots of stock cubes in the pantry, and they were always sort of crumbled into the braise or casserole or the casserole or whatever. I never knew what was in it. I know they were very salty.
Very salty, yeah.
But I never knew what was in them. But I don't think I ever saw my mother break it up into a jug of water to make stock to go into something. Do you know what I mean? It was always going straight into something like broken up, and it was always this semi-pasty, dried, but sort of semi-soft
sort of
texture.
Okay.
The weirdest things. I know Marco Pierre White, the godfather of modern cuisine, he must have done an ambassadorship or a deal with someone who was doing stock cubes. And there's some videos on YouTube. They're funny to watch because you can tell he doesn't want to do it. He's just doing it for a bit of extra cash. And he's trying to integrate stock cubes into his style of cooking. And it just doesn't. It's weird. It just doesn't work. I don't know how we got into stock cubes, but anyway. Yeah, there was something almost sort of set fish food about them to me.
Wow, you really...
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not against them at all. In fact, I will, if I think something's not that little bit sort of...
Really?
I will dissolve some in some boiling water and add it into the mix. Not all the time, but occasionally.
And I mean, I know for a fact that people aren't going to go making their own stocks all the time. But I think at least the next step up is, you know, the made chicken stocks or vegetable stocks that you can get that are an actual stock. They're a liquid.
Yeah.
Rather than a stock cube. I don't know, there's something... I don't think I've even seen them in a supermarket because I know that you can buy powders now too. Like I just bypass them. It's like Gravox. Remember Gravox?
Yes, I remember it. You haven't met my family, have you?
Yeah.
My family, that was what they... except for my grandmother, who taught me how to make gravy. Without doubt, every cupboard I go into... In fact, my favourite two that lived in Wollongong until they recently both passed away, they would love Gravox gravy over there. And they'd say, "Don't worry about making it your way, Dale. Just if I was cooking dinner, just just use the Gravox is fine." And I'd be, I'm not sure how I know how to make that. I can't necessarily use that, but you'd follow the instructions and whip it up, and they were really happy with it.
Yeah, that's another funny one. I mean, because I don't know what's in it. Clearly, like corn flour or a thickening agent of some description. I don't know.
I wasn't interested enough to look, but they certainly loved it, and I thought, okay. But at the same time, I thought if I was to make it my way, they didn't have a lot of the ingredients that I might have used
to make a proper gravy.
To make a proper gravy out of the
flour, butter, and some like water, so you can pick up all the stuff off the bottom.
Yeah, no, they didn't have and
a whisk.
No,
I don't believe that at all.
No, you don't.
If you can make Gravox, you can make a gravy.
Yeah, you should see. Anyway, their pantry was.
Look,
it was.
Yeah, I've never understood those sorts of things, and it's not being a snob or anything. It's just I've never understood.
Well, with your skills, well, probably not, but a lot of people, like I've seen the way you make stocks, and it is amazing, and it is a beautiful process. But for most people, a packet would be
because a stock, like a packet stock.
Yeah.
Okay, right, fine. So I if I've run out of stock at home, I've always got, what are they? UHT packets, right?
Yeah.
So they're 1 litre. They're about $2.
Yeah.
But it's like a very tame chicken stock,
totally.
Or a very light on vegetable stock, but at least it's not water.
Yeah.
Right. So I have them at home.
Yeah.
Right. If I've run out of stock and sometimes I'll use them as a base to deglaze the bottom of the roasting dish, right? If I'm done a roast or whatever. So I'm not anti them. It's just the Gravox and the stock cubes and the stock powders and all the rest of it. They've just got nothing to do with stock. And I think if you're going to make a pie mix or a casserole, like I think a good stock makes it what it's worth. Again, if we go back to the old days working in the French restaurants, we would make like hundreds of litres of stock every day, and then a lot of it would be cooked down into sauces and various different things, but they were the base fundamentals of things like the beef bourguignon, which is why it was so good. It wasn't so good because it was great beef or anything like that. It wasn't. We used beef cheap, like one of those secondary cuts you can get, but it was because of the stock that we'd spend time making that your beef cheek's now cooking in something that you've spent hours making it was just so much more flavourful and better. So it's I suppose a little bit snobbish, but I don't get it.
Are you a gravy person?
I am, and particularly it's funny, but particularly at the moment. So my partner, she loves gravy, like properly. She's like, no, if we're doing a roast, you have to make gravy. Like there's no if, buts or maybes. Like if we have a roast, and she loves lamb roast. If we have a roast, she doesn't care what else goes with it, has to have gravy. Absolute must.
And how do you make your gravy?
Much like everyone else. So it will be the fond off the roasting, all the bits that catch on the bottom of the roasting tray. So I always do my roast sitting up on a trivet. So anything that drops down gets caught. When the roast comes out to rest, I'll usually make my gravy in the same roasting tray in a nice deep roasting dish. So I'll deglaze with a little bit of wine, depending on if it's chicken, I'll use white wine. If it's beef or lamb or whatever. Chicken and pork, I'll use white wine. Beef, lamb and other, I'll use red. And I'll I'll just deglaze the bottom of the pan. I'll tip the fat off first, deglaze the bottom of the pan, get all those nice bits of stuff off the bottom, then add stock, whether it's packet or not, doesn't matter, but certainly not cubes. Powder. Add stock, I'll bring it up to the boil, I'll let it simmer for a while, I might throw in a sprig of fresh rosemary while that's just simmering away, and then I'll strain that liquid off just into a little jug, and then I'll make a roux, so butter and flour, just a very small amount.
In the same pan?
No. So I'll do this in a saucepan now.
Yeah.
So, because what I've also done at the same time is help clean that roasting dish. So it's much easier to clean later on. So I've poured all that off, set the roasting dish aside. So I've got essentially what is the base of a gravy. It's not thickened yet. And then I'll make a roux and slowly add that in, and it's essentially like making any roux-based sauce, like a bechamel sauce or a white sauce, just whisk it in bit by bit. And then if I think it needs a bit of a kick up the bum, I might add a sprig of fresh herb at the end, so thyme or rosemary, something hard.
Okay.
Just to give it a little bit of zing. Always check the seasoning, always, like super, super important. And then I usually make them reasonably thin and then prefer to cook them down until they get to like just that, where they cover the back of the spoon. So a little bit sort of viscous and tacky, but not uber thick.
Okay.
Yeah, and speaking of which, like, and I don't often do this, but I was here on the weekend doing some stuff. I actually, for the first time in a while, just thought, I want to just have a wander around the market and think of what's good. And I was over there with our mate Joel, and I was showing him where to go and buy his chickens, and we were talking about roasting chickens and brining and all this sort of stuff. And for some reason, it just washed over me that I wanted a pork belly roast. So I was like, right, and now you know how I have done pork belly.
Yes.
There's a million ways I've done it before.
Yes.
Okay, I could hang out here all day and do it in the steam oven. But I was also thinking, well, I've got a bit of time. I want to go home and watch the footy, and I want to do, I'm not super mobile at the moment, so I'm kind of limited with what I can do. So I just grabbed this big hunk of pork belly, and I thought this is an interesting one for anyone listening. So I took the pork belly home, and rather than score the skin, I got my carving fork, and I stabbed the skin like 500 million times. So lots of little holes in the surface of the skin. Lots and lots of little holes. I put that on my trivet, which went on my roasting dish, and put some salt on it. No oil, no nothing, just some kosher salt on the skin. And I set the oven, just a standard oven, to 120 degrees Celsius, and I roasted it like that for 6 hours.
120, 6 hours.
For 6 hours. So it went on at 1 o'clock, and then at 7 o'clock, when I had everything else, so I had roast potatoes and all the other palaver with it, and yes, I did make a gravy with it. So when I was about ready, all I did was, and I very rarely do this, but I was thinking about, someone was asking me about grills the other day and grilling food in an oven and all the rest of it. I thought, I better, just brush up on my, see what you can do with the grill. And I thought, here's what I'm going to try. So I turned my grill down to pretty low, but I had the pork belly pretty close to the top, to where the grill elements are. So I put it on low, and I put the pork belly directly under the grill. So because it's been roasted at low temperature, right, nothing's really happened to the surface of the skin. It's actually just dried out a bit. Anyway, and because that low temperature roasting helped me render a lot of the fat out, and it was super succulent, like different texture to doing it steam ways. We've done roasting combi steam, we've steamed it and then pan fried it. We've done a lot of different ways, but totally different texture, but certainly a lot of fat rendered out of it. And that last bit of grilling under there, the skin was epically good. I'll show you. I think I took a video of it. I'll show you a video later. But an interesting one for people, if they have a bit of time, and it literally was just stab it, throw it in the oven, 120 degrees. You could probably do it for about 4 hours, cover it, and then just very briefly under the grill. And you don't want your grill high, because you just want that radiant heat coming down on top, and it just ballooned up, like it almost doubled in volume the skin, and it was one of the crispiest pork bellies I've ever done.
Wow,
Just a
because
different technique.
last time I tried that, I think you and I talked about it, and it burnt to a cinder because I had it up too high.
Well, you see, this is it, and everyone does that with the grill, so that's one of the things.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a lot of people these days, and a lot of ovens and combi steam ovens, they have grills in them, and it's one of those things, and it's much like all temperature-based cooking. Everyone goes to the high grill setting. No one really thinks about those lower grill settings, and they're there, they're usable. So why not find a use for them? That's what exactly what I was looking for. I was like, okay, so if I put this under the grill for a longer period of time, rather than shock it with like some super intense radiant heat, a longer period of time, just where the heat isn't as intense, what result am I going to get? So, and that was it. And jeez, it was good.
Really? Excellent.
Yeah, it was really good. And it was even still, this is how crispy it was, even the next day, when I cut some up to go in a sandwich, the skin was still crisp, and that's after it had been in the fridge overnight.
Wow.
Now you know you've got crispy pork skin,
Wow.
and it's still crisp the next day after it's been in the fridge. Wrapped in cling
Okay,
wrap
that's a
or
good
whatever.
tip. Yeah.
Anyway, so went off on tangent again about your casserole pie thing, but anyway, yeah.
Well, one of my favourite ones when I'm out is porchetta.
Oh yeah.
Trying to, So, but
you can do that in a similar vein.
Yeah.
Yeah, similar way. But yeah,
It's a roll then.
Yeah, that slow cooked pork belly over a long period of time. It's quite rich, of course, but delicious. Delicious. Might do something like that on a cooking mistake, actually.
Well, I think if Dougie listens to this, which sometimes he does, he'll be asking for one because it's
what we're calling him now.
After all these. Seriously, we are so close to hitting for the print on demand book, and we've checked this book I don't know how many times, all of us, and Dougie goes through it and pulls out on every single page. Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. So back to the drawing board tonight. Yeah. Lovely. Well, thank you, and it's good to see you, and thank you for sharing that. And
don't know what we shared, but.
Well, thank you. And another tip on roast pork.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how many ways you
can
cook roast pork?
Give that a go. If you've got some time, and that's literally chuck it in and walk away. You don't have to.
And it would have smelled great.
Yeah, well, it was a long period of time.
Yeah, no, but that would have smelled really nice in the house. Watching the footy, and your team did pretty well on the weekend.
Very nice result, actually.
Yes, surprising result given.
If you're a true believer.
Oh, please. We all believe in our team until they
suck.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you for that. Good to see you, Paul. Take care. Bye. Bye, everybody. Happy cooking. Thanks for listening to this podcast as we explore home cooking in a modern world. We'd love you to subscribe, and for more information, please go to our website, cookingwithsteam.com.